Hello everyone and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel and this is my review of the live action How to Train Your Dragon remake, a movie that is based off of an animated movie that was really important to me as a kid. I was in the theater remembering that when I was in middle school or elementary school, I made, probably based on someone's design, this paper toothless. I was a big fan of Origami Yoda, and so I made this paper toothless that I took with me to school, and I remember learning the How to Train Your Dragon theme on my French horn, and so this series, the design of Toothless and the identity of Hiccup are things that have been with me most of my life, and I went into this with a little bit of skepticism, and I'm going to use this review to talk about why I think this is one of the best live-action remakes I've ever seen. I think it is works slightly worse than the animated original, but the amount that this movie still resonates almost 20 years later in a totally different visual format is remarkable. And so I really enjoyed it. And all of it is not because it's based off of the original. I think there is a lot quality here in the live action remake that can be credited to the production design and the cinematography and the casting and these things. So this movie is two parts that make a really interesting and I think excellent whole. But I think most people are here to hear why that this movie is a live-action remake. The remake is the big part of that. It's How to Train Your Dragon, parentheses, remake, but the remake is kind of like the thing that people are talking most about. Because this is one of the most faithful adaptations of an animated film to live-action screen that has ever been made. It is very shot for shot. It's very line for line. I would say maybe 5% of this movie, if that's stretching it a little bit, is actually new lines, new moments, new shots. But that does mean that the vast majority of it is the exact beats that you remember from the original film. But I do think ultimately it comes out on the positive here, obviously, if I'm saying I like it so much. And that can probably mostly be credited to the fact that Dean DeBlois, the director of all three of the original movies, co-creator of the original, and then director of all three of them, is back for this one. And these are kind of the only movies he's done, I believe. But the passion really shines through, and this familiarity with the intent and the source material is here in spades. And let's start with what's different. Casting. I was not sold on the casting of this movie for the first, let's say 25 minutes, the writing of that opening scene where Hiccup voiceover describes Burke, and it cuts to this sort of dropped in the moment action sequence where Hiccup is running around as there's a dragon attack, and he's trying to set up his invention to show people that he can stay alongside the rest of the Vikings. The writing of that scene is excellent. I think it's one of the best, like immediately understanding the purpose of a character, the culture of a place, and of course the writing of it is translated from the original. But the acting and some of the moments that they recreate here, I don't think hit as well. And so, from a casting perspective, I was like, I know these lines so well with Jay Baruchel's voice acting as Hiccup. I know like these comedic beats so well, and I really wasn't sold on Mason Thames as Hiccup and on Nick Frost as Gobber. But as soon as Toothless and Hiccup's dynamic starts to build, and and Hiccup has to hide this fact from the rest of the community, and they start doing the Trail of the Flames and things like that, the movie locks in. I think there's really no weak link here in the cast. I thought they were, by the end of the movie, I was completely sold on all of them. The one that gets away the least unscathed, if you are to be a little more critical, is of course Gerard Butler as Stoic the Vast. He was the original voice actor for that, and so him coming back here is great. I remember, okay, he was a voice actor, he's coming back, and I remember hearing that and thinking, but man, Stoic in the animated movies is comedically large next to his comedically small son. I don't know how they do it. There has to be some sort of costuming, padding, and camera trickery to how big they make Stoic in this movie, but totally works. He's excellent. He's got that same tenor because it's the exact same voice, but I'm actually really impressed by how Stoic's like physical presence was translated into live action. I've got my own Toothless here. This is Jesse. He's gonna join me, but everyone else, he's got his claw on my shirt. Okay, everyone else I think does really well. I like Nick Frost as Gobber. He has a little bit of a softer side. He's less crazy than Gobber was in the original. I remember like his mismatched eyes and things from that original movie, and like the crazy teeth. But having like a more believable human face to this guy that is, for all intents and purposes, Hiccup's father figure, I think actually really works and makes the dynamic between Gobber and Hiccup feel a little bit more believable. But I also think that the supporting cast of the little group of teenagers, young 20s, people that are around Hiccup's age, his peers, I thought they were all excellent. Especially like the guy that plays Snotlout. He is so funny. I think he actually comedically does the best stuff in the movie. He's got these crazy expressions on his face. He's really exaggerated, but he's got this personal side to him that I think absolutely shines through in the performance. Let me get the name of that actor real quick. Gabriel Howell. Yeah, shout out to him. I thought he was excellent. And then Rough Nut and Tough Nut, they get less to do, I think, in this movie. They're pretty underutilized. And same with Julian Dennison as Fish Legs. The three of them are kind of backgrounded, but I think they all do a good job. I don't like Julian Dennison in most movies he's in. I can find him pretty grating, but maybe it's because he doesn't have the thick accent that he usually does in other movies he's in. He worked really well here as comedic relief. Again, kind of underserved in the script, but that's fine. He's a supporting character. And Nico Parker as Astrid. Astrid is one of my favorite parts of the original series, and I thought she did a great job here. I do think that one of the downsides of the live-action adaptation is that some of the exaggerated movements that especially Astrid does in the original films can't be done as exaggeratedly in this. But to her credit and to stunt credit and things like that, Nico Parker and Astrid in this movie is doing some crazy flips and dives and stuff. I'm like, whoa, no, that's that energy that I remembered from the original movie. So casting, I was sitting in the movie and I was like, man, they nailed this in terms of the casting. I think everyone's really excellent. And the cinematography, Bill Pope, cinematographer on things like Baby Driver and Matrix and Spider-Man 2 and Shang-Chi. He's here. He does a great job. I think that the cinematography in terms of where the camera is placed and the sweeping camera movements and things is, again, one of the strong suits of this movie. You get some really incredible imagery. I love this shot where it's kind of like the Dark Knight of the Heart, the moment when Stoic and Hiccup are having their like major argument before Stoic goes off to the dragon's nest. He's framed by the door, and he says like something about you're not really my son, and he's framed by this. You don't even see his face. It gives it this really menacing, dark tone to it. And then the door shuts, the massive Viking door shuts, and Hiccup's face is covered in darkness. It's those kind of moments that are very much recreating moments from the original, but putting them into live action does give them a different tenor. And you get a cinematographer like Bill Pope, and I'm like, okay, this really works. Now, I think that he's a little bit underserved. The camera work is a little bit underserved because I do think this movie's color grading, one of the things you know if you're a film fan about live action remakes is they always dumb down the color. This is the gritty, realistic version. And this movie is that to a degree. I think it visually, in terms of production design, costume design, and the animation of the dragons, doesn't feel like the gritty, realistic version. Like you look at Optimus Prime, and Optimus Prime, the animated character versus the quote-unquote live-action character, is a totally different design. But the animated quality of and designs of the dragons are pretty close to one-to-one. Their eyes are maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more spikes, but they translate really well. And that definitely helps retain some of the spirit. But the lighting and the color grading are kind of washed out and kind of gray. And I'm definitely not as much of a fan of that. This movie's also at night a lot of the time. And it's pretty hard to shoot good-looking stuff at night. There are very few movies that really nail that, and I would say this is not one of them. But again, a thing to praise that recaptures that energy from the original, and frankly is just excellent in its own regard, is the costuming and the production design. I was consistently impressed by the practical sets that they have of all these Viking streets and the costumes and the helmets and that dragon arena where they do the Trial of Flames with the chains above and stuff like that is real. It feels rusty. It feels lived in. I was very, very impressed by that. Can I take a moment? Wet my whistle. So that is what is translated and changed from the original to the remake. The other one thing that I will say doesn't work as well is comedic beats. A lot of the comedic beats of this movie have to do with how lanky Hiccup is, how big Stoic is, how big Fish Legs is, how lanky Rough Nut is. Like again, the comedic moments are very much based on character design in that original, and that doesn't translate as well here. There were definitely some moments that worked. Like there's this moment when Stoic is very proud of Hiccup because he thinks he knows that he's been the top slayer or whatever, and he like gives him like a good old father bump on the arm, and Hiccup goes flying. And I was like, okay, all right, that worked. But there were just a number of these comedic moments that didn't land because for comedy, it's very hard to translate cartoonish things into reality. That's why something like what Charlie Chaplin does is so impressive, because he gets this almost rubber hose physicality to him that is very rare to get, or Jim Carrey. But Mason Thames is not Charlie Chaplin or Jim Carrey. And that's fine, but again, that's one of the things this movie does definitely worse, is those comedic beats don't land as much. But what does work, and why I think this movie still needs to be truly, truly appreciated, is that yes, it's an adaptation. Yes, a lot of what it's doing that works comes from an excellent script. I actually have not read the original book, How to Train Your Dragon. I don't know how much comes from that. But I am familiar with the animated original. And watching this movie, the animated remake, helped me to realize, I mean, I've always thought that movie was very special to me, that this is one of the best scripts, one of the best screenplays in terms of theme. For me, maybe ever. And again, this is something that is all this stuff is from the original. All this stuff is in the original, but it's still here. And that makes this an excellent movie, is all of these themes. So let's dive into them. The one thing that, and a lot of this stuff is stuff I could have realized about the original movie. But again, it was this experience watching this live action one that maybe helped me see it from a slightly different angle that made it set in a little bit more. Because I've seen the original 4, 5, 6 maybe times like that. But the themes of xenophobia, that is the most obvious theme in the How to Train Your Dragon movies, is the Vikings being afraid of the dragons because they don't understand them and are unwilling to understand them. But I think watching it here in live action and seeing the damage in a more grounded and relatable to a human eye way of buildings burning down and things, and the fear on live action people faces, I think helps set in this. It's xenophobia, but it's also like nationalism in this really fascinating way, because the rallying cry for the people of Berk, the Vikings of Berk, is that we're the Vikings of Berk. We're descended from the greatest dragon hunting warriors, and this is our home. We must fight for it. And being very insulated in that. So that nationalistic quality is something that I could have realized in the original. I don't want to stop saying that because it's true for all of this, but it was this one that really helped us set in of just how insular they are and how unwilling, and that it takes a alternate perspective to help them to break out of that. And that ties into another thing that I think is a change here, unless I'm misremembering some stuff from the original. But one thing they explicitly show here, and it's a little bit underserved, but it's still in the film, so I'm going to talk about it, is the fact that it was the different tribes of dragon hunters from all across the world, which of course means casting-wise for the people of Berk here, there are black people, there are Asian people, and there are, like, I guess the predominant racial background of the actors is Irish, Scottish, something like that, because obviously that's kind of what visually this is based off of, or Norwegian, Scandinavian, I guess. But the idea that they're descended from all of these different tribes that come together, and part of what they draw their strength from is that they're like the best of the best from all over the world came to Berk and founded this place as the ultimate culture and a home for dragon hunters. And so they see their strength from their quote unquote diversity of the fact that all these tribes have come together and formed this one community. But what they fail to recognize is that the true strength in diversity comes from diversity of thought rather than diversity of racial background. Of course, those two can be the same thing, but especially in this film, it's the homogenous thought process of the Vikings that leads them to not. They champion the fact that they're from all these diverse backgrounds, but the reality is it is the diversity of thought that Hiccup brings, just for who he is, that is what allows them to prevail by the end of the day. I just thought that was really fascinating, and I don't remember if there are other visually racial backgrounds in the animated film, but adding that touch here I thought was very interesting because it adds this layer of strength and diversity from a different angle that I thought was quite interesting. And then just the bond, and this is what really locked me in. So I said I don't really like, or I thought it was fine, but I wasn't really super sold on that opening act of the movie. But when Mason Thames has to interact with Toothless in the scenes in that like the hole in the ground, the I don't even know what you call it because it's not really a ravine, but it's kind of, I don't know. But we all know what I'm talking about. The secluded place with the waterfalls that Toothless is trapped. He's so believable interacting with Toothless, and the animation on Toothless in live action is so seamless that I was just completely bought in. I do honestly think that the bond between Hiccup and Toothless is one of the best bonds in cinema history for my taste. The way that they get to know one another, the way they learn from one another, it's truly beautiful, and it's really, really well realized here in the acting from Mason Thames and the animation of Toothless, which is again very much recreating what was done in the original, but it's very hard to actually actively and accurately translate the emotion of an animated character onto live action screen, and they totally knocked it out of the park here. And then of course you get the soaring sequences with the music, and the music's also excellent here. That really just suck you in and completely absorbed me into the world of this film. And I just think it's remarkable. I thematically I think the script is excellent. It has so much restraint, and it takes so much of its time with the progression of things. How long it takes Hiccup and Toothless to really bond. How long it takes Hiccup and Astrid to connect. In my mind, especially because I've seen all three of those original trilogy, I think of Hiccup and Astrid as like, romantically intertwined, but also just like aligned. But watching it again here, it isn't until 3/4 of the way through the movie that Astrid even likes Hiccup in any way. This movie, the script from the original and in this one just has so much restraint, and I think also because this movie is longer, it's some of those sequences that they extend that I think also really grab me. The middle chunk of this movie is so long, but it's the best part of the movie, in my opinion, is the methodical nature that, again, is extended here of Hiccup testing, learning about dragons and testing his experiments and building his bond with Toothless and showing slowly and step by step the other people, his peers and then the people of Berk, that dragons aren't actually a threat. And some of the things that I'm pretty sure they added here, unless I'm misremembering, maybe it's just a lot quicker in the original, is Hiccup learning how to take care of dragons through different small moments with Hiccup. I remember in this one, in the new one, where they are flying and then they land at a field of dandelions, and Hiccup's Toothless is there like sneezing, and so Hiccup learns that if he brings a pocket of dandelion fluff and he blows it into the face of a dragon, then they are ostensibly stunned or whatever. I don't remember that moment in the original, and there's just a number of those. I remember him like shining the shield on the ground to like distract the small one. There's some of that, but I love the way that they extended that, I believe, in this film, and also him testing and tweaking his design for the tail fin is extended in this movie with just more progression of him testing it and failing, and like it just has just a longer sequence. I think allows you to drink it in a little bit more, and that's some of the best parts of the movie, I think. And so yeah, this movie is longer, but I didn't feel it. And when I realized there was something, because again I'm so familiar with these moments, I'm like, okay, remember that line, remember this beat. when there was something that I was pretty sure was new, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's think about why this was included. And for me, most of the new moments, new scenes, new shots are a net positive for the things that I find most interesting about this film, which is that slow progression, the taking their time and showing Hiccup and Toothless bonding. Yeah, and last action sequence, exceptional. I mean, it was always exceptional, but seeing it in live action here, that giant dragon is just a wonder to behold. And watching them fly in on the dragons and fight it, and the like big shadow of a volcano and a gigantic 300-story tall dragon towering over these real life people, I think gives it a drama and a weight that certainly was present in the original, but is exaggerated here in a, I think, a really quality way. And so at the end of the day, I was really taken aback, and I wasn't sure I was going to like it. But now we have two great versions of this. And here's my final thing, is people undersell the importance of remakes and of adaptations. Because, and here's how I see it. And I know this is not a new thought, but the original will always still exist. From whatever version this is, if it's a game, it's a movie, it's a book, whatever, you can always still go back to the original. And frankly, you can pretend that the new one doesn't exist if you want to. But what I see as the importance of remakes and readapting a story that has very important themes is that people, children especially, young people, myself included, want to see something that is literally new, that is geared towards them, that they're seeing the marketing for, that they can get hyped for with their friends, that they don't have to, that they can find naturally in their environment through their friends, like carrying lunchboxes and things like that. Something that is, yes, marketed to them, but feels of their time. And obviously How to Train Your Dragon is not that old, but the desire for younger people to have a story that is made in their time, again, I think highlights the importance of remaking a story that and doing it well, that communicates those themes that made the original work so well. And so the reason why I'm going to champion this remake is that, yes, I had the original How to Train Your Dragon when I was a child, and kids today, of course, watch it on, Universal doesn't even have a streaming service, whatever it's on. I guess it might be on Netflix. Watching the How to Train Your Dragon movies, it's the themes that are important. It's these moments, it's these themes of xenophobia and identity, and nationalism, and even mutually assured destruction, right? The two sides are destroying each other. They've killed hundreds of us. We've killed thousands of them. Like, these moments, I want to be shown to the younger generation for something that connects to them on a more personal level. I played the game Silent Hill 2, the Blooper Team Silent Hill 2, last year, and I've played the original Silent Hill 2, and I think it's fine, but it's not of my time. And playing that game and learning the themes of Silent Hill 2, again, it set in my mind how important a remake can be to personally connect to it. People, I think, don't want to admit that something being new is a positive thing, is a enhancer to many people's attachment to a work. And so having a remake gives a chance for the important parts of a work, whether that's the themes and gameplay and tone of Silent Hill 2, to be modernized in Blooper Team's remake, or Dean DeBlois taking his original film and putting it in a new version that, yes, is made so that Universal can have a film out and drive people to their theme park and make money. Yes, absolutely. But what they recognize, and having the original creator on board, is that the most important thing artistically is that a new generation gets to have their version of this movie that carries those important themes forward. And so, absolutely, I love this movie. I think it's excellent. I think the original one's better because I think that the lighting, color grading, and comedic moments of the live-action remake don't quite work. Jay Baruchel's performance as Hiccup has so much more emotion than Mason Thames, who I think does a good job and an excellent one. There are definitely some negatives that make this a step down from the original, but both can be great. And I think both are great because they know what they're going for. The themes are great. The production design is excellent. This movie is phenomenal. The casting is great across the board. There's some really great moments of imagery in this movie. Just because it is based on another work, just because it's adaptation, I think undersells the amount of effort that goes into making this. Yes, you are basing the the shots and the pacing and these sequences on something much more closely than this that was previously done. But it's not easy to make that work. It's not easy to have the sets be built in a way that makes us feel immersive. It's not easy for Bill Pope as a cinematographer and Dean Blois as a director to direct that final action sequence with this massive thing, because you have to account for different levels of production. It's a totally different thing. So a lot of work goes into making a movie that works. And this movie does. And so I recommend going see it. I recommend taking your kids to go see it, because, again, they should attach themselves to this, because at the end of the day, it's a good story. And it has good characters and has important themes that everyone should be exposed to. And so I'm glad that it's back out in theaters. I'm glad that a new generation can come to find it, because I think it's one of the best screenplays of all time.